for the greater society. And he went to North Carolina State and studied there. And so he's going to be leading the session today. And for those of you that didn't see if you've seen the poster, when being good enough is not enough. And we're going to be talking about community building today. So thank you very much, Deva Madhava, for joining us.
Haribol. Thank you, Risheshwar Madhava Prabhu, for having me. And Ananda Madhava Prabhu, thanks for hosting. And I'm inspired by any young people that are willing to get on Zoom voluntarily on a Sunday. I don't know about you guys, but I'm all zoomed out these days. So it's nice to see the desire to have some sangha, to have some connection to Krishna consciousness is pulling you onto here of the many different places you could be, including just zoning out. Instead of zooming out, you can just zone out in this material energy quite easily these days. So I'm moved by the presence of each of you. Unfortunately, I don't know any of you guys. So I wanted to, I know Risheshwar Madhava Prabhu, and I see Karuna Avatar Prabhu's here, who I've gotten to know kind of via another Sangha that we have normally on Sundays. But Haribol Prabhu, Jai. It's kind of funny talking to and having a conversation with devotees that you don't know, because I feel it very presumptuous of me to just kind of get on here and tell you something without knowing your particular situation and where you're at in your Krishna consciousness. It's always a kind of awkward circumstance, and in the Shastra you don't really find it. It's not that somebody just starts, putting themselves on the Vyasasana and speaking, and there's a kind of question and answer, and there's a submissive inquiry, etc. So hopefully Risheshwar Madhava Prabhu's request from me will be sufficient, that I'm not totally offending you guys by just blabbing on for the next 25 minutes to a half hour. And after I do, I hope that we can have a conversation together and here's some comments, questions from you guys. Beforehand though, I just wanted to see, maybe we can do like some people have their cameras on, some people have their cameras off. Can everybody put their camera on for just a moment, if it's at all possible, if you're not like still in your bathrobe and eating Cheerios right now?
For these, just in general for these sanghas, we encourage everyone to have their camera on if it's possible, because it just makes it a lot more personal for us to be able to see the face behind the camera. Thank you.
It's going to be like a raising hands thing, camera on, camera off, to answer a few questions. So that's all. Don't worry, it won't be on for too long. You can get back to your Cheerios and bathrobe and momentarily. So I just wanted to see, kind of turn your camera off. Not yet, but as an answer to the question, turn your camera off if you haven't read Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is all the way through. Turn your camera off. Okay. So everybody's read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is all the way through once. So I can speak freely then. That's all I was checking. Okay. Jai Prabhu's. So yeah, when good enough isn't good enough, or something to that effect, was the title of the discussion. And in terms of what I feel like I can offer sincere devotees trying to develop their Krishna consciousness, I'm no sadhu, and if you want to learn how to get taste for the holy name, if you want to learn how to study the Shastra, if you want to be around somebody that's been steeped in the practice for 40 years, I'm not the person to come to. But I have been able to take my very passionate and passionate nature and somehow or other do something for Krishna with it the last 10 years. I met the devotees in 2010, and that was in Detroit, Michigan. And I graduated college the year before that, 2009. And from 2010 to now, I helped start the only 2 projects in North America that I know of that have been started by young people in the last 35 years. The Harmony Collective, which is still going on, and then the New York City Harinam Ashram, which of course was started by Ram Roy Prabhu, but established by a couple of us, helped to solidify. So as a part of those 2 projects, Harmony Collective is still something that I'm doing here in Michigan. And I don't say that proudly, because if we look at the movement from 65 to 77, really until like 82 or so, you saw hundreds of places started by thousands of young people who felt this deep sense of urgency, looking out at the miserable world around them and the joy that they'd experienced in Krishna consciousness, they felt this deep sense of urgency to share something with the people that they had received. And that enthusiasm, there wasn't a whole lot of understanding, there wasn't a whole lot of technical expertise, and yet because there was that faith and enthusiasm in the instruction of the spiritual master, lots of wonderful things happened. Over the last 35 years, there's been a culture of excuses and blame that has just kind of settled into the devotee sangha and empowered people to be kind of insipid followers of the Krishna consciousness movement in a very religious way. That if I chant my 16 rounds, if I kind of look the part, I put my dhoti on at the right time, I put my sari on at the right time, my tilak is sharp, I know the verses to say when, you know, the Swami asks, he says the first half, I can say the second half, and that's my Krishna consciousness. That's not Krishna consciousness, that's religiosity. So what I wanted to discuss today was when good enough is not good enough. When this idea of just looking Krishna conscious isn't satisfying you, it's sure as hell not going to satisfy anyone else. It's not going to attract anyone else in this world to know what it is that we're doing. And so as the world is burning right now, literally, North America especially, the world is a little bit sensitive right now, so in some ways to the degree that was going on in the 60s and 70s when Prabhupada and his disciples were working most intensely. The recognition of people in general that there's something off with the material energy, right? There's something not right about the world and something that could be better, but nobody cares what we have to say about it. And that should hurt us. That should bother us. Nobody seems to want to know what Krishna has to say, what Krishna's devotees have to say, what it was that Prabhupada was offering when he came. It's only in a kind of religious way even that we're offering those things. So I wanted to talk today about how each of us can become a little more independent in our Krishna consciousness. It's not a word that we're encouraged to develop often. Often we're told to become dependent and to become surrendered souls at the lotus feet of the spiritual master, which is important and essential. But what it really means to become a surrendered soul is to offer all of your personal faculties. So if you don't know what those personal faculties are, how can you offer them? So simultaneously, there's this development of a personal sense of responsibility, a personal sense of achievement and capacity, and that's then what you have to offer to Krishna. His Holiness Bhakti Rasayan Sagar Maharaj, he put it wonderfully in Mayapur. I heard a class from him, and he was pointing out how Arjuna was trying to offer Krishna nothing. He was trying to run away to the woods and call that an offering. And Arjuna was instead asked by Krishna to go win the world, give me that, and then you can renounce. When you have something to renounce, then you can give it up. But when you have nothing yet, what is your giving up? It's just literally that, giving up, instead of fighting for something worthwhile. So there's a nice there's a nice set of verses in the 11th canto that I wanted to turn our attention to in this regard. And this is from Krishna himself. This is in the Uddhava Gita, chapter 7. This is the beginning of the Uddhava Gita, which is a very long conversation. And Uddhava Gita is an interesting, not as well-read section of Krishna's teachings as it ought to be. Of course, Arjuna is in an apparently mundane situation in his discussion with Krishna. He's feeling overwhelmed by the thought of having to fight his family and all the emotions that come around that. Uddhava, though, is receiving instruction from Krishna in a distress situation also. But Uddhava's distress is the kind of distress that we want in our Krishna consciousness. Uddhava is seeing that the Yadu dynasty is crumbling. Everything is falling apart. His comfortable situation with Krishna that's been there for so long is fading. And he's worried that he's not going to have his service anymore. He's worried that he's not going to have his connection to Krishna anymore. And this is the worry that we always want. This is the worry of the bhakta. The bhakta is always fearful and anxious for Krishna's service and the potential of losing it, instead of all the stuff in the material world that we get anxious about losing: our power, our position, name, fame, profit, etc. So the Uddhava Gita is a wonderful crucible of anxiety that the devotee is in, Uddhava is in. Where's my service? How am I going to stay connected to Krishna? Because he's become a little Krishna comfortable. He's become a little used to having Krishna always nearby, and the queens of Dwarka and the whole city all oriented around their relationship with Krishna. It's very happy, and all of a sudden things are falling apart. So Krishna is now going to give Uddhava some instruction to reassure him that wherever you go, you can be with me. And actually, your consciousness is always thinking of me, so you have nothing to worry about. And in that regard, he says something very amazing to Uddhava at the very beginning of the 7th chapter, which I'll read now. The Supreme Lord replied, generally those human beings who can expertly analyze the actual situation of the material world are able to raise themselves beyond the inauspicious life of gross material gratification. An intelligent person, expert in perceiving the world around him and applying sound logic, can achieve real benefit through his own intelligence. This is the most striking sentence. Thus, sometimes one acts as one's own instructing spiritual master. Haribol, who's ever heard that before? That you can be your own guru. And that's Krishna saying this to Uddhava, to his dear devotee. You need to learn to be your own guru. And so what does this mean? We can look to the Mahabharata. There's a sweet little exchange. Some of you, cameras off if you've read the Mahabharata. Okay.
I haven't read all of it. I've just watched it, but I've read parts.
Are you? Yeah, the TV serial.
Chopra's version from the 80s?
Yes.
I mean, I think a lot of Indian kids have probably grown up watching it.
It's instead of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you got to watch Arjuna and Bhima. I'm jealous.
Yeah. So but I have not read the story cover to cover, and I know it's very different from Chopra's version.
Raseshwar Prabhu, I just need to very, very strongly encourage you to read that book as soon as you possibly can, because
Yeah.
It's just the most enlivening, wonderful. It's just like, it's everything that you want in a book. It's adventurous. It's such a page turner. Like the pace never lets up. I just finished it again for the second time, and it's like.
Which version? Sorry, whose specific version?
Krishna Dharma Prabhu's version. Yeah, Krishna Dharma.
It's on Vedabase. It's right there. Just, you just go to library instead of like the main set of books from Prabhupada. There's a few books not from Prabhupada, and this is one of them. And Karuna Avatar Prabhu is saying it's just fire, right? It just totally affront to the lazy, lethargic attitude of the Kali Yuga creatures that we've all been exposed to and adopted to some degree. It's just a total affront to that consciousness. So I'll read an interesting little section from it now. So this is Arjuna, and they've been banished to the woods, right? And they know they're gonna have a throwdown with their cousins. They know they're gonna get in a battle, but upon Yudhisthira's encouragement and everybody follows Yudhisthira's lead, they're gonna wait. They're gonna wait it out the 14 years. They're gonna do things right, and then they're gonna go and fight. So they've asked Arjuna to go to the heavenly planets to acquire the weapons necessary to fight the Kauravas. So Arjuna's going to the mountains. And as an aside, it's quite interesting. In this section, we hear and see Arjuna doing these austerities that he ostensibly says he can't do in the 6th chapter of the Gita, sitting down, doing the whole breathing thing, suspending the breath, not eating, not sleeping. Everything that he says would be impossible for him to perform, he's actually doing it in this chapter, but he's doing it because there's a sense of purpose to it for him that's natural. He's a Kshatriya, and he wants weapons to go fight these guys that insulted his family and defamed the devotees. So for that reason, Arjuna can do anything, including sit down next to a river and meditate, not eating for 4 weeks at a time. That's a little aside. So the excerpt reads, upon reaching a plateau high on the mountain, he suddenly heard a voice resounding in the sky. So he's reached a plateau and he's doing some meditation. Stop! Arjuna looked around and saw an ascetic sitting at the foot of a tree. The tawny-colored Brahmin had a brilliant aura. His lean body was covered in deerskin, and his matted locks hung down to his shoulders. The ascetic said, "Oh, child, who are you? You appear to be a Kshatriya. Do you not know that this is the abode of peaceful Brahmins who are free from anger? Even to have been able to reach this spot indicates that you already attained a high state of purity. Now perfect your life. You have no need of weapons here. Throw them away." So now let's just put this in the ISKCON context for a sec. You're hanging out at the temple, or you're out and about at a home program, and a sannyasi who you've never met before gives you an instruction. How do you take it? What does it mean if a sannyasi the sadhu is there and the sadhu gives you an instruction? Somebody jump in.
You need to do something about it and act on it.
Yeah, you need to do something about that instruction. Now that's like your Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, right? Now this is my life and soul. Any other ideas about what to do with the instruction?
Perhaps you just need to take a moment and think about what he said before you do something.
Arjuna doesn't even take a moment. So I'll give you guys Arjuna's reply. I lost my page here. Yeah, so the sadhu says, now perfect your life. You have no need of weapons here. Throw them away. Arjuna made it clear he had no plans to renounce his weapons. I need my weapons to serve my elder brother, Yudhisthira, who has been wrongfully deprived of his kingdom. O Brahman, I will not cast them aside. So that was quick and quite untraditional, as we've been taught, right? That here's the sadhu, I mean, Arjuna's Kshatriya. Talk about Varnashram. It's like black and white. Arjuna's Kshatriya. This is a Brahmana. Brahman says something. Arjuna is obliged to please him, isn't he? But instead, he defies him. And see the result. Seeing Arjuna's dedication to duty, the ascetic replied, O slayer of foes, I am pleased with you. Know me to be Shakra, king of the gods. Ask me for a boon. Arjuna was overjoyed. Here was Indra. With folded hands, he said, O exalted one, the boon I desire is that you bestow all your weapons upon me. So Indra was one of the people that Arjuna was wanting to meet. And indeed, this was a test from Indra. Was Arjuna really going to stick to his guns in the literal sense, right? And keep his guns instead of giving them up in the name of, so-called spirituality, so-called attaining the higher planets, abandoning his mundane worldly connections, whatever the case. So the awareness of Arjuna in his own strength and the duty which he's been called to is an essential component of relating to the sadhu. It's not a one-sided exchange where the sadhu just, magically bippity boppity bhakti understands everything about us and then tells us something kind of off the cuff and we follow that in a kind of blind way. Rather, the exchange with the sadhus are meant to be conversations. They're meant to be two-sided. Love takes two. Love takes an exchange. And so that responsibility coming from Arjuna is what actually gives Indra the faith that, yes, this is somebody that I can give a boon to, and they'll take advantage of it in the proper way. And as many of you probably know, he gets all kinds of flashy, perfect weapons from Indra. And very soon Indra connects him with Shiva, and Shiva gives him, weapons that are indefatigable. So that certainty of Arjuna in his sense of purpose, even the face of an apparent challenge coming from a senior, is something that actually brings back to him more the kind of benediction he was looking for. This is what we mean by understanding how to be your own guru. Krishna himself is saying to Uddhava, how to recognize what's good for your own spiritual life and where to get it from. Without this awareness, then we're just kind of a hapless religionist being pushed and pulled by the tide of the society, whether it happens to be going in a Krishna conscious direction at the moment or happens to not be. Risheshwar Madhava Prabhu asked me to bring up something about His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, because Maharaj's disappearance day, solar disappearance day, was yesterday. So I'm very happy to do that because Maharaj was a perfect example of this spirit of doing the needful, even if no one else knows what that needful thing is. So Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, first of all, just looking at his pedigree, so to speak, he was born in the slums in Cleveland. He was low-income black neighborhood. Kind of typical American urban scene or really Western urban scene. And somehow, by his intelligence and determination, he made it to Princeton, which all of you know is an Ivy League school. And then later on, he met the devotees and he had a fun exchange. You can hear it on Maharaj's memories, Prabhupada memories. Maharaj speaking about he was really into martial arts, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And he had a kind of like spiritual master, guru, sensei figure in his life. And he asked him one day, Maharaj, what is the highest teaching? I want to know, sensei, what is the highest truth that there is to be understood? And his sensei said, for that, you have to go see Swami Prabhupada and his Hare Krishna people. And Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj said he was devastated. He said, you mean the people in the bed sheets with the mismatched socks? They've got the highest teachings? So then, but being faithful to this teacher who had given him so much, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj went to see the devotees and took the teachings and accepted, he saw Prabhupada and accepted, okay, yeah, there's something special about this person. And so then some months later, he went back to this sensei and he had some questions and he wanted to ask those questions to the sensei. And the sensei got incensed. He got mad at Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And he said, you have gone to see the Jagat Guru. You've gone to the lotus feet of the Lord's pure devotee who's been sent to this world to deliver us all. I will not allow you to implicate me in offenses to him by answering any of your questions. you go to Swami Prabhupada with your questions now. So it was striking for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, the degree and fidelity to which this teacher of a kind of generic spiritual understanding recognized the power of Srila Prabhupada. And he asked, well, Sensei, you know, I've learned so much from you and you've taught me so much also. He says, yes, I've taught you what you could learn from me, but now you have to go learn the rest from Swami Prabhupada. And there's many other teachers on this planet right now who understand the position of Prabhupada, but are not serving him. Out of envy, they're not recognizing and encouraging their students to follow him as they should. But I won't allow you to make me a similar fool. So in another memory, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj is sharing how he went to Prabhupada one day and he was a little upset. And he said, you know, Srila Prabhupada, I was wanting to bring to your attention that there's some racism in your movement. Because Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj had noticed that he was being treated a certain way by some of his godbrothers, you know, and he reasoned, and rightly so, I'm sure, that reason he was being treated that way was because he was a black man. And so he said, Swamiji, there's racism in your movement. And it was a bit of a criticism, you know, like we're supposed to be pure devotees. We're supposed to be practicing the highest thing and everybody on the Brahmabhuta platform. And yet here I'm being treated like a mundane, you know, black person. And here are these mundane white people with their racism problems, just like out in the normal world. Srila Prabhupada's response, however, was, yes. And if you are bothered by that, it means you also have this skin disease. If you're allowing that to excuse you from becoming Krishna conscious, it means you also have this skin disease. Am I able to share my screen?
I'll just make you a co-host and then you should be able to do that.
Thank you. I saw this fun little cartoon today that I think Krishna sent me to share with you guys based on this this little point from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. But the living entity in the conditioned world, before I share my screen, our most precious possession. What's our most precious possession in this material world? It's our list of excuses. We're so much clinging to all the reasons that we can't do what we say we want to do. Because ultimately what we say we want to do, we know it's impossible to be perfect, powerful, and happy in this material energy, to prove that my material existence can go on perpetually and satisfy not only myself, but everyone else I connect myself to. We know that's a fallacy. We know it's a lie, and yet still we're kind of helpless to live into it. And so what do we need in order to excuse ourselves from not actually living into that falsehood of the material energy? We need our excuses. We need those reasons why we can't be our best, because our temple president is like this, and the GBC is like that, and my mom did this to me when I was young, and the black people, and the white people, and the Democrats, and the Republicans, and the rich people, and Trump, and blah, blah, or Trudeau, and blah, 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 blah. So we cling to our list of excuses. It's the most precious possession of the living entity. And this little cute cartoon is my, how do I share screen?
So I think Ananda Madhava, if you click the share screen, oh, here we go.
Can you see that cute little picture of the gopis and Krishna by the Yamuna? So here's the little cartoon. There's a little cartoon called Family Circus. I don't think this is an actual family circus strip. I just think it's somebody who cleverly photoshopped it in. But this is the culture of the world today. How do you get what you want? Become the best victim. The best heroes today are the best victims. And this is why the Mahabharata is such a nectar. And why Karuna Avatar Prabhu's read it twice now, because he doesn't want to live a victim life. He wants to live a life as a virya, as a hero. The word virus comes from the Sanskrit word virya, which means virulent, hero, forceful, energetic, having some influence in the situation, not being helpless and hapless to it. I want to unshare, stop share. There we go. So this list of excuses, we each have our individual list of excuses. And if we actually want to do anything worthwhile, especially in the context of Krishna consciousness, we've got to give it up. Good enough isn't good enough. And my wife, she was born in the movement. I think Deva Madhava Prabhu shared that many of you guys probably more or less were born into some context of Krishna consciousness. And she was laughing with me the other day. She said, you know, for us Gurukulis, it's not so easy to feel so good about our Krishna consciousness right away, because all the easy stuff we never, like the easy wins in the early part of your Krishna consciousness that people like me get when we kind of convert, you don't get those when you're a gurukuli. You don't get to stop eating meat and stop doing drugs and stop, chasing illicit sex, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You start from a pretty high place already. So those feelings of success that come early on for someone like me who comes into the movement, those don't come to a gurukuli. You're already pretty high up the ladder. It's hard to climb and it's hard to feel like you've got some momentum for yourself. But that doesn't mean that the same principle of progress isn't there for you as it is for me or anyone else. And so in recognizing that and embracing that, rather than kind of pushing away or just allowing good enough to be good enough because, hey, at least I chant some rounds, that most of those other guys don't chant any rounds. Hey, at least I'm following some principles. Most of those other guys don't follow anything. At least I'm doing some service. Most of those guys don't do anything. Good enough's not good enough. It's not going to satisfy your heart. And it's definitely not going to attract the other living entities who are confused in so many cycles of suffering based on their particular circumstance. So that's it's a kind of shotgun of different ideas that I wanted, a shotgun buffet of different ideas I wanted to share with you all before opening it up for some comments and questions for the next half hour. So hopefully we can all chime in and connect. It's a nice, big enough but small enough group that hopefully everybody can share.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So there's just one question that's come in. I just wanted to share it with you.
Sure.
So the question goes as this: going back to your story of the sadhu and Arjuna, when we are faced with a situation in terms of an authority figure, such as a temple president or senior, if the temple president asks to carry out a service or something like that of sort, but we don't agree with it or see eye to eye with that, then how can we go about the situation? Where is the line between obeying a senior, but also using your own intelligence?
Yeah, well, in the circumstance where you've been put in, and again, we're speaking generically here because it's, I appreciate the question. So in principle, you probably need to do the service at that particular moment. You probably need to go along. But then ask yourself, if you're really in a position where you don't feel like there's any kind of back and forth with that particular leader, and it's a very one-sided situation, and you don't feel comfortable taking their one side, then it's probably better for you to go find somebody else to lead you or to become a leader yourself. Vishnu Jan Maharaj, he had a saying, either take orders or give them. Either take orders or give them. So the program of excusing yourself from service because you don't want to take somebody's orders, but you're also not responsible enough to develop your own program to give them. That's what we see across the movement, and that's not working, right? So a blind uncle is better than no uncle. They have the saying. So you definitely also, just as a caveat, you're not going to agree with everybody all the time anyway. So sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. And sometimes the leader might do things that you're very inspired by and you're moved by. And so you have to look at it as an aggregate also. The tendency of somebody looking for excuses and the tendency of a victim is to try to find that one reason why they can throw out all the good qualities of another person. It's a very disempowering attitude, but it's the attitude that we're all kind of cultured to have developed in today's age. Sometimes when I'm speaking to older devotees, trying to help them understand the plight of young people who are trying to come to Krishna consciousness, I help them recognize that we hear you get no religious training in secular schools, but that's not true. You get a lot of religious training in secular schools. The religious training we get in secular schools that we've all gone to is how to pick out hypocrisy, right? And from any grain of hypocrisy anywhere, we're given the excuse or the empowerment, so-called, to then relieve ourselves of the burden of any responsibility to that institution. Because if they're so-called pure and they're so-called perfect and they're following an all-loving God, then how can this hypocrisy be present? That's the kind of religious training we've received, and that's bad. It's bad religious training, obviously. So it has to be taken in toto, that relationship. On the aggregate, do you have trust and faith in that person? Then in a particular situation, they need you to do something you don't agree with. Then out of honoring the relationship as a whole, please do it. And don't use that as an excuse to excuse yourself from that service. But if that's a trend of you doing many things which leads you to feeling uninspired in your Krishna consciousness, and that person seems unwilling to have any conversation about it, then that's not a leader in Krishna consciousness. That's, or at least not the kind of leader that you should be following. If you have that kind of doubt in the heart, then you need to find some like-minded association, some trustworthy sangha where there can be a back and forth, a real exchange. Srila Prabhupada's dearest disciples, if you look, I love Tamal Krishna Maharaj's Servant of the Servant is a really important biography of Prabhupada to read for anybody that wants to develop this more mature relationship to the sadhus and guru. Jiva Goswami talks about Vishrambena, this attachment to guru as a friend. And this is actually what the guru is excited for. The guru doesn't want a sycophant, just somebody that needs to call them up to find out which Cheerios to eat in the morning, which bathrobe to put on. That's not what the guru wants. The guru wants an independently thoughtful person who's able to execute based on the principle of Krishna consciousness. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, in his biography, you read how he develops this peer relationship with Prabhupada. Prabhupada is always Prabhupada, but he treats Tamal Krishna Maharaj as a peer. He gets angry with him, he yells at him, he takes his advice, he apologizes to him. They have a real relationship, not this kind of lopsided, top-down, very stereotyped idea that we are given and also develop ourselves out of laziness and so many other reasons. Tamal Krishna Maharaj and many other, not that he's the only one, but this particular biography is a wonderful place to look into that. This is the kind of relationship that we should look to develop with the sadhus and our sangha in general, a reciprocal one back and forth that simultaneously respects the position and authority and at the same time recognizes the ability of everyone to contribute to the principle, because super soul is inside everybody's heart. So that's my generic answer to the question without knowing about the specifics of the relationship, but I appreciate it.
Deva Madhava, just to add to that point, I was going to add that from what I recall, when Tamal Krishna Maharaj, sometimes would complain to Prabhupada about, the devotees, he actually told Tamal Krishna Maharaj to go out and, then make your own, like association and friends.
Yeah.
If you're going to complain, just find new devotees to make that are suitable to you. And I thought that was really, I myself have actually taken that advice from Prabhupada. It's not easy, but it definitely is it's very fulfilling.
No, wonderful.
To find that like-minded association.
And it's interesting, if you feel yourself suffering in a certain sangha, suffering in the sense that you're not feeling nourished, how many others are also not feeling that, right? And so then if you take that responsibility to step up and create a space where like-minded people can come to serve Krishna, another way of putting it, if you have that problem, chances are several others have that same issue. And so rather than taking the excuse of, oh, poor me, and this is just not my luck and just not my community, and Krishna wants to punish me right now, and these kind of appeals to providence that we're supposed to feel bad all the time, rather than kind of wallowing in those excuses, take responsibility for creating your own container of association that's still faithful to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, and watch how Krishna works. I know I've had these is one of the reasons I enjoy having conversations with Risheshwar Madhava Prabhu, because we have these kind of encouragements of each other that, yeah, it's hard work, but it's worth it. When you have 20, 30 people around you and everywhere you look, okay, so it's not 200 or 300 or 2,000 or 3,000, but 20 or 30 like-minded people on the same page, ready to go kick some butt for Krishna. That is exciting. And 200 or 300 or 3,000 people in a room, but nobody's on the same page and just waiting for the curtains to close so they can take prasad, not so exciting. So what do we really want? What are we really here for if we're going to be doing the work? That's what I'm interested in personally.
Prabhu, on that note, I would like to ask you about kind of how you got to the point of starting the Harmony Collective and what exactly your core principles of community building and nourishment is. Just a bit about your community in that sense.
Sure, Prabhu. Thanks for asking. So 2010, I met the devotees. 2012, I joined, or 2011, I joined the Detroit Temple. That was winter, so like February 2011. And then the authorities there encouraged me to start doing some Sankirtan in a college town called Ann Arbor, which is about 45 minutes away from there, Detroit. So in doing Sankirtan there, I met a few people and realized that maybe we could have a little center out there. So in 2012, we started renting a house nearby that college campus. And then 2 years later, we bought a house, mortgaged it. So we're still paying on it, but it's bought. We bought a house, 5-bedroom house in 2014 in another college town right next door. So there's like University of Michigan, which is like an Ivy League school of sorts, public, but Ivy League level. And then there's Eastern Michigan University, and that's the school in the town that we're in now. We don't interface much with the college students, and so I'll come to that in a moment as to why. Because by the time we had the building that we purchased in 2014, what had become clear to me was that I'd created this space. I'd wanted to start this center so that there'd be a place for local people to feel comfortable. But what I realized and recognized was that so many devotees don't feel comfortable in the sanghas as they are at present, especially local devotees. And so I was seeing that Krishna was flooding our place with those people, right? And I was doing all this work to bring new people, but Krishna was showing this irony that we're not even taking care of the people we have. There's so many people already who accept Prabhupada, they accept Krishna, they're ready to do something for them, but first they need to feel a little bit of connection. They're not just robots that, do this, do that, and they will. They need to feel that sense of relationship and community. And so from really 2014 until now, that's been my primary focus, is to distill it to a principle, we say chant and be honest. That it's okay to be where you're at in Krishna consciousness as long as you recognize where we want to go also, which has been the challenge, it seems, in many communities where you have large groups of devotees. Everybody needs you to look like a good devotee, so nobody's willing to take the time to get into your stuff, because it takes work. And when you see 200 or 300 people and you realize they all have stuff and they all need a way to share it, it's a daunting task to want to enter into those kinds of conversations. So the tendency of management is just to kind of ignore it. And if enough people are giving donations and enough people are wearing the clothes that they need to wear, and the tilak, et cetera, the externals, then that's Krishna consciousness. That will good enough. And over here we've said that's not good enough. So chant and be honest. If you're a sadhava, then you can be a real sadhaka. Sadhava is this word in the Bhagavatam we see many times that Prabhupada describes as a thoroughly honest person. So we've tried to create a space where people are able to come and relate their challenges in the material world, find a community, at least a few people within that community who relate and support them, and from there help them develop their sadhana, chanting, reading Prabhupada's books, and figuring out what service is wholesome for them. So now our next phase of endeavor, so to speak, I feel comfortable that we now have a solid kind of core of 20, 30 people. We have another building in that same town, Ypsilanti, so 2 houses now, 2 ashram residences. And we have an eco model, a 10-acre project with 5, now 6 cows. A new cow just came yesterday. So that'll be our last cow because there's only 10 acres. So we have 6 cows and a 4-bedroom house and an 1.5 acres of community shared agriculture, like a greenhouse and garden that have vegetables coming now. This will be our 2nd week where we have vegetables delivered to the congregants who are paying $25 a week. So we're trying to show all the facets of Srila Prabhupada's culture so that there's really something for people to take shelter of when they come. And we've realized that this is what new people are looking for in this age where their religious education is based on finding all the hypocrisy within people. You can beat them to the punch if you're honest. Right? If you're presenting yourself as pure and high and mighty and holier than thou, it's very easy to pick apart that presentation. But if you're presenting yourself as a normal person and simultaneously they see you're doing even a few extraordinary things, then they're attracted to you. Then they want to know more. They want to understand this philosophy that allows you to feel satisfied and safe in a world that provides that for no one else. So I'm really excited about this next phase because the kind of outreach and preaching that I'd hoped for 7 years ago is finally starting to happen now because of the time that we took to take care of the devotees that were kind of already here. And definitely we made a few devotees along the way who were attracted by that down-to-earth, careful approach. But the kind of large, impactful outreach we haven't been doing up until now, but we have plans and are starting to execute because the team is tight and wholesome rather than just kind of spun out and living on religious sentiment.
Sure. Can I interject? I want to actually share my reflection in Deva Madhava, what you just shared is really similar to what I've experienced at the Bhakti Center in New York. Just, it's like, in terms of community building, it's not that these are such elevated people that it's hard to connect to. They're like normal people. Like, I remember walking in on Thursday night kirtan, and then, just everyone's eating prasadam afterwards. And, it's just a normal human interaction, a human conversation with someone. And that in itself was just so dramatically different from almost every other like devotee like experience I'd ever had. And it was just like, wow, like, okay, this is real. This is where it is. My question again actually kind of goes back to Arjuna meditating, and you mentioned how he was doing austerity, the same austerity that he said was impossible in the Gita. He was doing that, but like very easily, because that was his nature. His nature was to be a kshatriya.
He was doing it to get more weapons.
Exactly, yeah. And so I guess, could you just elaborate on that? Because in my head, like, especially when it comes to like community building, like tying it into the broader theme here, like, especially when you're not so, I'm trying to find the right words to describe the situation without being, offensive. When you're not of the same like nature, I guess, the same ras as, the people you're surrounded by, or the people that tend to gravitate towards you. I guess, like, how do you like adapt or apply the principles to like those particular circumstances?
Totally. Thank you for asking that, Sid. And I'm going to directly speak to it in a moment, but just to finish up something to Karuna Avatar Prabhu's question and comment, and dovetailing what you said from the Bhakti Center. I had the joy of watching the Bhakti Center develop over the last 8 years or so, and having gone back and forth to New York for the first 4 years that we were starting the Harmony Collective also, and helping the Harinam Ashram. So I used to stay in the Bhakti Center from time to time also. And that took work. What you see now and what everybody sees on the internet, that didn't, it wasn't just Radhanath Maharaj waving a magic wand. That took a lot of time, a lot of energy from many, many devotees, some who are not there anymore to see the fruit of it. But to Karuna Avatar Prabhu's question, that's one principle I would like to bring in. Good things take time. And this Parivrajak traveling all over the planet, nectar hound, go wherever the fun looks like it is, culture that's been there in the Krishna consciousness movement for so long, is one of the things fundamentally undermining good community. Because to really develop the relationships that it takes to nourish and support each other takes at least years, if not decades. Gauranga Prabhu and Govinda at Chaupati, who now masterminded the Govardhan Eco Village, I was listening to them a few days ago. They said it took 15 years before the devotees were on the same page well enough to be able to go do something like the Eco Village, right? So everybody said, well, let's have a sustainable community. It's a sexy thing, right? Self-sufficient community. Prabhupada wanted it. Hari Bol. Let's just go buy some land, buy some cows, and then we'll have it. No. The relationships take decades. The cows are the cherry on top. The land itself is the cherry on top. The relationships that it takes to sustain those resources, those take a long time and a lot of austerity, a lot of self abnegation to develop. And so that's something at the Bhakti Center that isn't always apparent to, now the people just walking in for the first time Thursday night kirtan to 200 people, best friends all in the same room. It took a lot of time and patience to get to that place. So to your question now about, you may see yourself in a situation where service is stereotyped, let's put it that way, and your association doesn't seem so like-minded. This is one of the real challenges of the movement, and this is where you really just have to take responsibility for what you can offer. It really just comes down to that. I gave a presentation at the ILS in Mayapur this year called The Next Generation or The Last, talking about how if we as a community don't shift our understanding of what service is and how to engage young people, we won't have any movement left after the next 10, 15 years when the Hindu, diaspora from India, the adults who grew up with a Hindu background basically die off. Their children have no sentimental attachment to that Hindu background, right? And meanwhile, we're not coming up with any substantial way to engage local people. So where's our movement after that? So there's a kind of I call it the D-Day syndrome. Do you guys know what D-Day is from World War II? Yeah, okay. So D-Day, World War II. The Allies have no land. Hitler's got it all. So how do you wage a war? You have no battlefront, right? So you need some little something to stand on before you can wage the rest of your battle. So D-Day was that day where the Allies just pushed everybody, whether you were lieutenant, sergeant, private, whatever, everybody was the same guy. Get out there and And that was the early days of the movement. It doesn't matter who you are, what you're doing, what you're wearing. It's just, get out there and chant, get out there and distribute those books, start a temple, whatever you got to do, however you got to do it. Just get us some turf, get us some stuff for Krishna. So that was needed. That was wonderful. It was essential. But now imagine if the Allies had lived out their D-Day strategy every other day of the war. How would that battle have gone? We wouldn't be here today. The world would not be the same because Hitler would have won. It would not have been a very good strategy. That was a useful strategy for that time in the war period. So Prabhupada often spoke about the war against Maya, but where is our larger strategy besides just D-Day? Because we glorify D-Day, we eulogize D-Day, and the sacrifice of those devotees is fantastic. But to say that you, in 2020, probably a well-educated person from a well-established background, should also just spend your life out on a street corner is actually a disservice to the sacrifice that those devotees made. They did what they did so you could do something they could not, so that you could leverage your position in the material energy, leverage the connections of trust that others have with you to help them recognize the value of Krishna consciousness. So there's this pejorative term called bridge preaching and I say blow up the bridge. That could have been a whole nother discussion. You could rename this discussion, blow up the bridge. This is a horrible term which has undermined so many valuable efforts that so many good-hearted devotees could have made the last few decades. From the place where they are, they could have influenced so many people in Krishna consciousness if they just been allowed to and encouraged to leverage their position in the material energy. You guys know what I mean by leverage, right? People in your business, people in your family, people in your country, they trust you. That trust, we want them to trust Krishna. The word faith is a kind of like ethereal, abstract thing. What we really mean with the word faith is that we want people to trust Krishna, trust the name, trust the Bhagavad Gita, trust the Bhagavatam. So that trust in you can become trust in them. But you have to be allowed to remain in a place where they can trust you. If you hide away in an ashram, change your clothes, shave your head, and become this kind of alien-like entity, how are they supposed to trust you? So in principle, again, going back to that little Leela with Arjuna, you have to be responsible for your powers and your duty. You have to recognize what facilities Krishna has given you. And even if that's challenged by someone in a position of apparent authority, you have to prove yourself worthy of a higher standard. And I've noticed this myself in Krishna consciousness. I'm in a room of temple presidents and GBCs, and I'm only 27 years old. The next closest person to me is 42. So I'm looked at as, like, what's this kid even doing here? But I know that Krishna has given me a certain perspective. I understand the plight of the young people. And then the irony is all these guys are sitting around, and ladies also, older ladies are sitting around the room talking about how can we bring more young people, but nobody's asking the one young person in the room. So then I have to stand up for that. I have to say, excuse me, maybe you would like the young person to say something about what young people might want to see in Krishna consciousness. And so that was something to learn how to do and to navigate. And I've done it well at times and I've done it poorly at other times. But Krishna, by my sincerity and the blessings I have from my spiritual masters, I've been protected this far, right? And facility has come this much. And so in any successful endeavor, there's going to be more failure than success. This is something that we don't recognize in Srila Prabhupada's own efforts, is that the reason he succeeded so much is because he failed so much, right? We look at Prabhupada having 5,000 disciples and we say, wow, that's so amazing. But how many people did Prabhupada talk to? Literally millions. How would you feel if millions of people rejected you in Krishna consciousness? Right? We go on book distribution and a couple dozen people turn us down. And it's like take 7 Gulabjamins to get over it. Prabhupada was being rejected. If you look at it this way, Prabhupada was being rejected hundreds and thousands of times a day, only to pick up a few dozen people a week. But that was, it was blissful, and it was quite substantial in the ultimate. But in the immediate, it was quite a lot of difficulty and rejection, especially from the perspective of somebody with a mundane view. So we have to be willing to put ourselves through that position of failure and apparent rejection and apparent suffering, taking advantage of the resources we've been given, taking responsibility for that, and having faith Krishna will send what we need to and who we need to leverage that for his service.
That reminds me of the story you shared in our other Sunday Sangha about your Christian friend who talked about Billy Graham.
Yeah, totally.
And just like if everyone in the world just converted one other devotee, like that would be enough. And
that's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, right? So now 2020, think about Uber, think about Airbnb, right? In New York City, 20 years ago, it cost $1 million to get a taxi cab license, right? This institution, this organization which held on to who got to be a taxi cab driver, they could charge you $1 million to get that license. And today, all you need is an empty seat in your car. And you're a taxi cab driver in New York City, because Uber has decentralized that what it means to be a taxi cab driver. Airbnb has decentralized. You don't have to have building permits and $25 million to put up front for construction costs and the kind of credit you need to draw another $75 million in long-term expenses to be able to start a hotel in New York City. Now you just need an empty couch in your apartment because of Airbnb. So when we look at our Bhakti movement, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the architect of our movement, Prabhupada was the contractor. He went out and found all the labor to build the house the whole world could live in. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur laid out the framework. He was the architect of the house the whole world could live in. And he designed this Nam hut, which had no temples, had no GBC priests, large ecclesiastical authorities. It was just asking everyday common people to take responsibility for having the holy name, the Bhagavatam, and Prasadam present in their own home. And if they had those things present in their own home, they had everything they needed to go back to home, back to Godhead, and to take others with them. That was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's principle. Now imagine that being given to you when you go into your ISKCON center. That we don't want you to come back. We want you to stay home and make your own home in ISKCON center. Based around the holy name, based around the Srimad Bhagavatam. You don't need us anymore. You've got what you need. But that's unfortunately not so much the culture. Jayab Thakur Maharaj, he's my spiritual master. Famously, he had a stroke. He had a stroke because he was, well, not because, but while he was writing a letter to the European GBC, requesting them not to ban him. Why were they going to ban him? Because they were worried that his Bhakti Riksha preaching was going to take away attendance from the temples.
Are you serious, Prabhu?
Yeah, that's a real thing. So this is is what we're up against. And it's not, the thing is, it's no one's fault. It's just the common mundane religiosity vibe, which comes into any institution. And so who undoes that? The young people. So that's why I've been a little brazen in my discussion and a little forceful, is because we have to bring that element back to the movement. We have to bring that sauciness, that fire, that rebellion, that willingness to do things that others don't want to do and don't want to say. That's our service, to be pissy little young people that aren't happy with the status quo. And the seniors who are really our seniors, they will appreciate that. They love it. They recognize it. They want it. They're desperate to see that somebody still has that in them, but they can't impose that on us. They have to, just like Arjuna, he had to prove himself to Indra. Indra had to wait and see, and Arjuna showed his mettle. So also, we need to show our mettle.
I'm just going to quickly jump in just because we have two individuals with their hands up and address that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, sorry. I'm not so good at attending.
Yeah, I just had when you were talking about leadership and just managing, Sutapa Prabhu from the Bhaktivedanta Manor shared a story on leadership from Brahma. He said the three lessons he said the first lesson was Brahma didn't get the creation right the first time, because he created I think the Prajapatis or the saints who went and they just said, we're just going to focus on, meditation. And then it wasn't until he created the Manus who came later on that they were like, okay, we'll go populate the world.
Right.
And then the second lesson was that even when we get it right, we're going to get critiqued. And he got critiqued by the gopis. right?
For making eyelids.
Yeah. And then the third lesson, he said that even after we get it right, and even after we, we accept the criticism, a point will come when the position will be taken away from us. That he showed through the example of Haridas Thakur. And what he did in that moment is he went deep into his bhajan, his sadhana.
Jai.
So anyways, but I think Malvika has had her hand up, so we'll go there.
Yeah, please. Sorry, I don't know how long I've ignored you. I'm not so good at attending these things.
It's all good. First of all, I just want to thank you for giving such a real and much needed practical talk. I think that's something that that I've gotten exposed to in ISKCON, is that we shy away from being real, in a sense, because we know the philosophy. And I think because we know the philosophy, we think that nothing else really matters.
We can hide behind it then.
Yeah. So I guess my question for you is, what, if you have any practical tips, because I'm sure, with building the devotee community there and really focusing on building real, genuine friendships with the devotees, if there are any practical tips that we could take back to our own home centers, and actually institutionalize those with our Sangha groups that we have, or with the youth group that we have here, where we can develop like real, genuine friendships that can also inspire people to go further along in the Krishna consciousness.
Sure. Well, one thing is not to institutionalize it without undermining your desire, it's to create that culture, I think is what you mean, right? So creating that culture means living it yourself and showing others that that's where the higher taste is at. And that takes time and patience. And that's why I mentioned, like, you can't just come in and give a seminar on nonviolent communication and then tomorrow expect that everybody's going to have great relationships. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. I wish it were that easy. But instead, it takes 2, 3, 5 years of day in and day out, just staying in touch, staying on top, being there when it's tough, and figuring out something fun to do in between. And after that, things can start to happen. So you guys are all young people. It's also maybe a little tough because you're not quite settled yet, and marriage and where am I ultimately going to be, and I'm just a student. I'm not sure of everybody's particular situation, but that can create a little bit of apprehension naturally. And how much do I want to invest in these people's lives? So my answer to that, maybe depending on who's maybe there, just go for it anyway. What's the loss of surrendering to relationships with devotees? There's a nice little anecdote in the Ramayana, right, where Marichi, he doesn't want to go in front of Ram as a golden deer. I'm like, I'm going to get killed if I go in front of Ram as the golden deer. And Ravan, of course, says, I'm going to kill you if you don't go in front of Ram as a golden deer. So then Marichi said, okay. And he goes in as a golden deer. And before leaving, Ravan says, so, I thought you said you were worried about getting killed. He says, yes, but better to be killed by Ram than you. So anyway, in this material energy, we're going to have frustrated relationships. We're going to be disappointed. We're going to, have setbacks and struggles and trials. But the reward is there when we're having all those things for Krishna. Even if you're only going to be there 6 more months, why not go all out? Or maybe you're going to be there in the next 60 years. All the more reason, go all out. But Krishna rewards those that go all out. So go all in with your relationships, and also start small. Just with 1 or 2 people, if you really develop a bond of trust and like dependence, and you can count on each other to do service and to reveal hearts and like that has a profound impact on everybody else. Not in that cliquey way, you know what I mean? I won't get into that, but not in a cliquey way, but in that nurturing, wholesome way. If there's just a few of you guys that are in it to win it, that's okay. The others will come around in due course of time. You don't need to force them or impose it upon them. Just give them opportunities to connect. So another principle, kind of practical thing, do things outside of devotional context. Go to the park, have a vacation day of sorts where there's some event or some game, or we do, we call them community refreshes, but we just go play volleyball in a park or something like that, where you're outside of the institutional atmosphere and the expectations that come along with all of that, the watching eyes. And then people are much more ready to be themselves.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for the wonderful question.
I'll just make a comment to what you were saying, Deva Madhava. And I think one of the things that we, as wanting to try to do some seva, have to embrace a little bit more than we may hope, is that, like you were saying, anything that we see that's inspired us amongst devotees or projects, there's been a whole lot of failures in the background before they got to that point.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to not only stay at the Bhakti Center from 2007 to 2009, but then spent a few months at the Eco Village. And Radhanan Swami had the idea of the Eco Village in the late 80s. They've been working on that since the late 80s, and it finally came. He brought Gauranga Prabhu on in 2010 just to kind of, let's say, okay, now we really got to push forward. But that's 20 years later. Like, they had a couple plots of land that didn't work out, like, and then even the Bhakti Center, like, just how many times, they just had to go through trials and tribulations before it is what you see. So I think one thing that we all have to get better at doing is just trying to embrace failure. And, and the point that you made that, it takes some time in one spot, that is going to be a little bit of sacrifice. And even for myself, with the small amount that I'm trying to do, just trying to really embrace and be happy in that sacrifice, instead of just always trying to reach for something, just being kind of in the moment and saying, this is what I'm doing. I'm giving it my best. And knowing that, you're pleasing either your teachers, your mentors, that's where a lot of satisfaction comes. Because if we look at the Bhagavad Gita, 3:21, that's one of my favorite verses, but whatever a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards they set, that's what everyone pursues. So what I want everyone to see in this Sangha is that you're that great person, right? And why are you that great person? Is because you're trying to connect yourselves with Krishna. That's what makes all of us great, right? And so if we're trying to, when we read that verse, we may think of other people, but I want us to start thinking about ourselves being that person to help lead the way for others.
Jai.
There was one more question. I don't know if you want to take it now.
Sure. I'll take it now, and then maybe it will close up. It's been about an hour, so I don't want
Yeah. Okay. So the second question, this was also anonymous, and it goes back to the point you were making between Arjuna and the sadhu. So it says, in relation to the story regarding sadhu and Arjuna, how do you stop yourself from committing sannyas aparadh while doing what you need for your dharma? For example, Jay and Vijay were doing their duty by protecting the gates to Vishnu, but the Kumaras got offended and cursed them to 3 lifetimes of being demons.
Yeah, it's subtle, and my assumption is that too many of us are erring on the side of caution. So there's this principle of ask for forgiveness rather than permission, and that's what I would essentially offer to that question. Like, do the thing that you feel in your heart to do, and if it's not the thing that you should have done, then you'll get to ask for forgiveness. And that's a very purifying experience. And that's Krishna's kindness on you, that you got to ask for forgiveness in a sincere way. But do the thing that is in your heart to do, accept that that's coming from Krishna, Guru, Gauranga. And if it's not, if they adjust you, don't hold to it out of a prideful way. If it really isn't working, then take the opportunity to ask for forgiveness. I've done that many times, and it always brings me closer to the person in the end that I ask forgiveness from. Devotees don't say sorry, by the way. We ask forgiveness because we know that it's not that our feeling of sorry matters. It's whether or not the devotee is willing to forgive us. That's what counts. And so to genuinely put yourself in front of another person and feel that dependence on their goodwill towards you is very purifying. And so if that's all that comes from you being a stubborn knucklehead, then that's a great day. But what could come from you being a stubborn knucklehead is seeing, hey, actually, Krishna wants me to do something here, and now I'm doing it. And now I'll gain the trust of others to help me do it because it's what Krishna wants to see done.
Jai, thank you. So I just want to put it open for everyone else if they want to put in any final thoughts or any final questions before we close up here.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from maybe the others that haven't spoken, or at least a comment or a reflection that stood out to them, or something that they're going to take away. Please, this would be a great opportunity to inspire all of us as well.
Prabhu, I'll jump in. I loved your talk about sustainable relationships. I'm wondering how the pandemic has changed how you are working on sustaining those, meaningful relationships.
Sure. Funny question, because we have such a small tight crew, it's like a family of 30. So we wind up seeing each other a lot, even though the center is technically closed. Where people are still just finding ways to be together. They can't help themselves. Another way is that we've had Bhagavatam class each morning on Zoom, and that regular hearing together, that is the essence of our community still, although there's that willingness to be with each other in our material situations. That's part of my service as the leader, is to reemphasize again and again that it still comes down to hearing and chanting as to why we're really here together. And so having the morning Bhagavatam class every day for the last 3 months now on our Facebook page has, I've been told by many of the community members, been a real bedrock in their consciousness to allow themselves to feel some connection to the Sangha, to Krishna, if somehow they aren't able to come and see us. So it comes back to Matchita Matkata Prana Tusyanticha Ramanticha, that the devotees feel enlivened when they come together. They hear and chant the glories of Krishna. That's what brings the satisfaction and pleasure to the heart that you can't find anywhere else. So taking that opportunity somehow or other, whether it's on Zoom or personal phone calls, is essential.
Thank you for sharing your insight.
You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
Prabhu, I just want to say thank you for such an inspiring class. I just wanted to say I really liked your point about not becoming the victim of whatever the situation puts you in, and trying to maintain that status of virya. And thanks a lot for mentioning the Mahabharat by Krishna Dharma Prabhu. I definitely want to check that out.
Oh yeah, I got turned on by my friend Ananda Murari 2 weeks ago, and now I'm hooked. So
Okay,
yeah,
thanks a lot.
Fired.
Karuna Avatar has dropped the bomb again in our Sangha today, so I'm in.
Jai.
Jai! Great
We've got another
success.
convert.
I'm in too.
Haribol!
Woo!
It's a book, Karuna Avatar, that I've always wanted to read, and I have it, so that's it. I love the story. I've listened to a lot of Mahabharata from other devotees and their realizations, but I think it's time.
Yes, Prabhu. Jai.
So I'll just maybe make one last closing offering from the Shastra to kind of round out the different things I've shared. There's 2 devotees of Mahaprabhu that we hear something about, the Maharashtrian Brahmana and Kurma Brahmana. The Maharashtrian Brahmana was the devotee who was in Varanasi, where all these Mayavadis were talking crap about the dancing sannyasi who seemed like a sentimentalist that had no understanding of Shastra, right? And the Maharashtrian Brahmana, he reasoned to himself, well, I can kill myself or I can change these people's minds, but those are my only 2 options. And imagine if that was the sense of urgency in the heart of each of Mahaprabhu's followers today in the Krishna consciousness movement. That I don't have the option to leave or to put my head in the sand or to hide away in my temple. I have to either change these people's minds or I have to kill myself. That's my only recourse, given that these people don't respect Mahaprabhu. And by that desire, Mahaprabhu facilitated Prakashananda Saraswati receiving his mercy, that whole leela of the 60,000 sannyasis becoming followers of Mahaprabhu. That was all from this one humble Brahmana who decided, I can't leave, I can't run away, I can't hide my head in the sand. I've got to do something or I've got to kill myself. So that's the urgency that we all need to develop in our Krishna consciousness. And then the strategy, take a page from the Kurma Brahmana, because Mahaprabhu famously told Kurma Brahmana to stay put. Kurma Brahmana said, I want to come with you. I want to leave it all. I want to travel as a mendicant, join the Sankirtan party. And Mahaprabhu said, stay where you are. And it's significant that he said this to Kurma Brahmana, because it was Kurma Kshetra, big, beautiful Sri Vaishnava temple. And Kurma Brahmana was a very well-established priest within that temple. So going back to what I shared with Siddha Prabhu a few minutes ago, Kurma Brahmana had trust, connection, friendship, leverage with that community. So if he's chanting Hare Krishna, others will appreciate the chanting of Hare Krishna. That will move them in that place. Mahaprabhu needs them to also be flooded in love of God, not just that the people that hang out with the traveling Sankirtan bus get to be flooded in love of God. So to have that down-to-earth connection with people in front of them, Mahaprabhu knew to be essential for the growth of the movement, and he asked so many people, Kurma Brahmana being the one example that Krishnadas Kaviraj features in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, to stay put, develop those relationships of leverage, and help people appreciate Krishna because they appreciate you.
Jai.
Right.
Go Ranga. Thank you so much, devotees. I feel like I have a like-minded Sangha in this group, so I really appreciate, again, Risheshwar Madhava and Ananda Madhava for organizing this and inviting me to come share something today. I look forward to coming to here and be with you again soon.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And just for those that may be tuning in for the first time or haven't heard about this, this is an endeavor that was started by Ananda Madhava and his sister Malvika in Calgary. We've been trying to get devotees across Canada, and now we just thought, because of Zoom, why don't we just break the border and get as many people on as possible, because that allows us to. The whole purpose here is to really give everyone some information that may be value to their spiritual life, but also, as Prabhupada would say, boil the milk a little bit, because if you've had an experience here that you would like someone else to have, eventually this is going to be the platform by which we're hoping that people would maybe be inspired to, open up a club at their university. Because right now we're in a great opportunity where the border doesn't matter, and Deva Madhava can be speaking anywhere in the world right now, as for now, while school is still going to be online.
For better or worse.
Or, any of us. But the point is that I really want us to see this as a very unique opportunity for, if anybody's willing to start anything where they are locally, we're here as a group to really support any grassroots effort. And this is really what this is. So please share what is now going to be termed as the sacred space. This is the name of this Sangha group, with anybody you feel may benefit. And again, just looking for a younger generation of devotees that are looking to grow, share, and learn. So Anand Madhava, anything else to finish?
Yeah, so thank you once again, everyone. Thank you so much, Deva Madhava Prabhu, for taking your time to speak with us today. It was really nourishing. And yeah, it just sort of, some of the statements you made, I'm like, I needed to hear that. It was just like, I needed to hear that to get to get me going. Just wanted to share something. I'm just going to share, Deva Madhava Prabhu, if you can just make me host, and then that way I can share my screen.
I'll make you host, huh?
Yeah. If you just hover over my name, it'll say under more.
Okay, yep, got it.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to share my screen with everyone. We're having an online retreat. Again, same sort of idea, mainly focused for the young adults, for the younger generation. And the title for the retreat is My Authenticity is My Power. It is going to be August 1st and August 2nd. Again, going with that theme, Deva Madhava Prabhu mentioned that chant and be honest. And using that honesty not as, not as something that's looked down upon, but using it as a source of power and inspiration to make the necessary change we need to make in our communities, in our societies, and all across the world. So we are having this retreat. We have we have a really heavy duty lineup with Krishnanandini Prabhu, Vaishishika Prabhu, Bhakti Marg Swami, Sachinandan Swami, and Bhutabhavana Prabhu as well. So more on this is going to come in the following days. In the next 4 weeks, we're really going to start pushing this through. Here is if you see on the top right-hand corner, there is the Facebook and Instagram handle. The Instagram is the sacred_space, and Facebook is the sacred space. So please give us a follow. Please give us a share, as we're going to put some more information out. And we hope to see you all at this fantastic retreat. And yeah, thank you once again for joining in.
Looks great. Thank you for organizing all these
Anand,
wonderful things.
Anand and Madhava, can you just at least share the, for people that may want to receive more information about these weekly sanghas that are happening on Sunday?
Yeah, so our email is, I'm just going to pull up our email. Give me 1 second. So our email is thesacredspace.ca at gmail.com. And we'll be sending out weekly sort of, if you want to be added to the mailing list, please just send us an email, or you can connect with us offline, however you want to, and we'll get you added on there. And so that way you can stay connected. Every week we have a different speaker that sort of brings a topic to light that is relevant to the discussion in the towards the youth of our movement. Okay?
Jai.
Okay. Hare Krishna, thank you once again for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Jai.
Madhava, Hare Krishna.
Hari Hari.